Good afternoon. I'm Jay Langston. I'm the Executive Director of the Shenandoah Valley Partnership. Welcome to our cooking show, our virtual cooking show. This is an experiment. I may provide more entertainment than you ever want, but we thought that this would be a fun way to talk about the food and beverage, sort of the dominance of the food and beverage in the Shenandoah Valley, and have a little fun at the same time. We are going to be showcasing the Hershey products that are made in the Valley, but also some of the other local ingredients. And we hope that you received your box with all of the ingredients, and we will be using those. I want to thank the Shenandoah Caverns group. We are at the Yellow Barn, their activity center, and they are hosting us at a fabulous facility. They have approximately 90,000 visitors that come through on a yearly basis. And we're also just right off of the interstate and close proximity to Route 11 potato chips, which some of you may have had before, and a company called Truck Vault, which is their first East Coast location for the outdoors recreation adventure manufacturing, and make very sophisticated cargo and compartments for trucks and different SUVs and things like that. So why don't we get started with the cooking right now? So the recipe is the Cappuccino Peanut Butter Blossoms. And I'm going to be going from my script somewhat because trying to talk to you and remember everything at the same time is going to be challenging for me. So first, if you haven't done so already, and you're cooking along with us, preheat the oven to 375, get that started, and go ahead and brew your coffee. Get it started because we'll be adding that in very quickly here. I will tell you, this is an original recipe, sort of a mistake, but it worked out. And this is, if any of you are familiar with like a Scottish shortbread recipe, that's what this is very similar to. So very easy to make, and feel free to always, mold it into what you would like to do. So let's get started. We're gonna first, start with the butter and get that put in the mixing bowl. And I've got mine pre-softened, and I find that the microwave works wonderful for that. I'm sure all of you are already well aware of that, but get that in here. And then I'll be adding in the sugars immediately after that. And I'll get this stuff out of the way. And so get my bowl set in place, the beater in there, brown sugar, which was 1/4 cup, and the 1/3 cup of just regular granulated sugar. And what we're going to do is just get this mixed up. I love these big mixers because it takes no time at all to try to get this done. And once we get this really good and creamy, we'll add the coffee. And how this recipe came about while this is mixing, I'll just tell you, I traditionally have cooked a lot of do a lot of baking around the holidays. When I was working at the Virginia Economic Development Partnership, I started taking in cookies for all of the staff there. 3 years ago, I think I broke a record. I've made about 1,300 cookies. I took none of them home. Nothing fancy. I just took recipes, simple recipes. Sometimes would alter them, but they had their favorites, made them, and people loved it. And so everything that I do from a cookie recipe is simple. And this recipe was one of those, except that I realized that when I was working on it, and my wife was in the kitchen and we were watching television, and she was standing at the refrigerator and realized that she forgot what she was looking for in the refrigerator. I looked at my recipe and realized that I was working off of the wrong base recipe. Nevertheless, the shortbread recipe turned out to be really good. So what we're going to do now is take the coffee and go ahead and put the coffee in, the half a cup of coffee. And just going to lightly mix this because it's not a whole lot of batter at this point anyway. And really, that's about all it takes. So now what I want to do, and I want to make sure that I'm following my own steps. So the coffee's in. I can remove these cards. Now we're going to put the dry ingredients in. So the first thing is have my flour, and instead of making the mess that I would normally make, and I'll just show you how mine looks here. I think you can see that. I'm going to take everything and just dump it right in. This is the 2.5 cups of the Wade's Mill flour that was milled here in near Lexington, Virginia. And then I'm going to set this back over, and then I'm going to take the espresso and our cinnamon with the pinch of salt. And then finally, the baking soda. And this is what I love. Short of adding the chocolate morsels, we have everything in the bowl now that needs to be put in. So again, I'll get this turned on. And we'll beat this in. And I learned earlier that putting the flour in, if you put it on top and then immediately start the beater fast, looked like a fog when I first started it up. Now that it's starting to blend in with this mixture, everything is getting absorbed in that. And it'll be a semi-stiff, kind of batter. So a lot of people, will take a look at this and think that you may want to use some sugar or flour to keep it from sticking to you. I don't worry about it. I just have it all in a condition where I can just roll it and put it right out on the cookie sheet. And it's done. I'll take this off, undo the beater, and so that you can see the mixture and you can see how stiff it is. Now, so that's perfect. So we're going to let it rest for a minute, namely because I want to interview one of our guests here, but it will also let the batter form up a little so that it'll be easier to roll out. So I'm going to pivot to another camera and we will pick up from there. This is what happens when you're doing stuff live. You have a few glitches. Hey, we'll roll with it. What I wanted to do is talk about the history of Hershey in the Valley. They located in 1980. Their second largest plant in the Hershey Corporation is in Stewart's Draft. They have had numerous expansions over the years, and it is where they predominantly make their peanut butter different candies. And so if you're in the Eastern US and you like Reese's, this is where most of those are made. They also make a few other products there as well. One of the things that's been very positive for us, for the Valley, is that Hershey expanded twice in the last 2 years. In 2019, they announced a $104 million expansion with 65 new jobs. And just this past year, in 2020, one of our bright spots in the Valley was a $135 million expansion with 110 jobs. Now, everybody knows how critical the workforce is to our companies. anywhere at this point, and this was a critical component of what has made Hershey successful in here. And so there's no one that can talk better about that outside of Hershey than Dr. Sharon Johnson, who is the CEO of our Shenandoah Valley Workforce Development Board. And there's a unique program that they worked with Hershey on called the Hershey Boot Camp. And so, Sharon, I am going to bring you into this conversation and would love for you to tell us about how you got started with Hershey and how this all came about with them.
Sure, Jay. Thanks so much. And great job in the kitchen there. You're doing a fine job. With Hershey, we started working with Hershey because they were constantly hiring. And they had already made strong connections with another one of our partners at Wilson Workforce Rehabilitation Center, because they're huge proponents of hiring individuals with disabilities. So we had just received a $4 million registered apprenticeship grant, knew again that Hershey's always hiring. And so we got involved in those conversations, which led to really 4 or 5 meetings. And at those meetings, we learned that Hershey wanted to have better retention of their entry-level manufacturing workers. They also thought that it would be helpful to have a pathway, a career pathway for entry-level workers. And they really wanted to, like we're hearing more and more employers say today, they really wanted to have some sort of control over the development of their talent pipeline. So they thought if they started developing their own talent pipeline, that would be very helpful for them. After numerous meetings, we got down to the point of the bottom line was they wanted to improve the quality of their entry-level hires. They wanted to make sure that those hires were a better match for the jobs in manufacturing, for the manufacturing environment, and for the culture at Hershey. And as is very important to them, they wanted to diversify their talent pipeline and ultimately their workforce. So we had numerous brainstorming sessions with them. The key to this is to listen to what the business wants, to what Hershey wanted, which they don't always know, businesses don't always know what they want. But if you start with what's the problem, what led to the problem, what's the root cause, what do you want to accomplish, and then come up with a customized solution for them. And that's what happened with this, was a customized solution.
That was a perfect segue, Sharon, because I was going to ask you how the development ran, and you answered that already. How long has the program been running?
The program has been running since June of 2018, and there have been approximately 6 cohorts. We started off with this working jointly together, and but Hershey, the key to this is Hershey was at the table for everything. They helped in the development of this. They interviewed their employees and said, what do you think causes new hires to stay and what makes new hires leave? And they were at the table for the design of this. They did video clips of the plant for the training process. They took pictures of equipment. They took pictures of the time card. They took pictures of everything and tried to make it very visual in the classroom training of what was going to happen. Of course, the first week of the boot camp is the classroom training, and then the second week is the on-site in the plant working.
The last question that I have, and again, you anticipated another one of my questions, but really appreciate you talking about the number of cohorts that you have through. I mean, I think that talks about the success of it as well, but give an idea of the different types of jobs that you were training for.
Well, it was primarily for that entry-level position and for the industrial manufacturing technician. And to help with that talent pipeline development, they really wanted grasped the concept and felt that it would be very beneficial have a registered apprenticeship program. So that was through the Industrial Manufacturing Technician Registered Apprenticeship. And through those 6 cohorts, they have registered right around 400 apprentices in that program. And 264 of those apprentices have been from the underrepresented populations defined as female, minority, veterans, and low-skilled individuals. And they have 157 at this point that have actually completed their industrial manufacturing technician registered apprenticeship.
That's awesome. Well, thank you, Sharon. Really appreciate you giving a background of the success of the program and how your organization and Hershey came together to solve one of the most critical issues that they have. I had no idea it was more than 400 that had received their the apprenticeship certification, and I know I'm butchering the exact title, but I think everybody gets the idea, so appreciate it. And the good news is that we actually have someone who's going to be our next guest when we get to that point during this cooking show, who's going to talk about going through it. So thanks, Sharon.
Sure, thank you.
All right, let me unhook from this, and we can get started now on the fun part of actually making the cookies. So I've got my cookie sheet, insulated cookie sheet, parchment paper, which I think is one of the greatest inventions ever, because that way I hate nothing worse than, first of all, trying to get the parchment paper out, but trying to clean off a cookie sheet. So, and I am going to take the mix. It should be just a little bit stiffer now, and get it off of the beater. And I'm not going to spend too much time with this, but you can imagine when I'm at home doing this by myself, that this is something that I try to get it as clean as possible, because I want to get as much. And then I try to hide the beater so that I can actually eat the rest of it. And yes, I'm one of those that still will eat the batter, even though it may have raw eggs, which this one does not. But you know, that's growing up in the deep South. This is what you do with this. So we'll put that there. I didn't knock it over. So I'm going to get the mix, and it is the right consistency at this point. And you can see it's clumping. If you like using a scoop, if you like using a spoon, if you just like using your hands, which is what I do most of the time, is I just will use a spatula or whatever I have handy, roll it up. That's approximately the right size. Make it whatever size that you like, but approximately a 1-inch ball. And I'm going to, because this is up high, I'm going to actually use, I just like these little simple plastic spoons, and I know just enough to, please just tell me what oh, I forgot the chocolate chips. Thank you. Live television, you know, this is the reason that, and I still didn't follow my script. So here, if you have a KitchenAid, this is going to be no problem. And if you have a regular beater, it probably would be no problem either. Thank y'all for doing this. This is the reason I was supposed to be trying to stick to my script, but I forgot to put this. I forgot this part. Going to put it in here. Sorry, it's hard reading from cue cards too. Get it in here, get it mixed up. I wonder when I'd have noticed that I hadn't put the chocolate morsels in, the Hershey mini chocolate morsels too, by the way. Oh, and I'm interested if anyone received 2 bags of the Hershey's mini chocolate. If you did, just put it in the chat. We'll be interested, because we wound up with a bag missing. And I promise that I didn't eat them when I was at the office. Okay, let's try this again. And hopefully that'll be the biggest mistake that I make. So we'll start all over with this. Get the batter out. Consistency still pretty much the same. And I can smell a little of the cappuccino in it already. So I'm excited about this. Okay, I'm gonna stop fussing with this now. And we'll start over. So take it. And this is where, if you want, you can use the sugar or you can use the flour. And I just roll it up and put it about 2 inches apart or so. Since it's a pretty stiff mixture, you can put it a little closer. With this size of a cookie sheet, I'm able to get anywhere between 4 to 5 rows, generally 6 across in here. These don't run the stiff mixture, and so this is perfect for spacing them and getting most of what you have in the bowl. And I guess I should show again the mixture with the chocolate chips in now that it's finally complete. And we're just going to continue to do this all the way across here. And when I'm doing this at home, I typically have a couple of dozen things going on at the same time, but am, either looking at how I can modify what we're doing into a different recipe or thinking about a different one altogether. Generally, it takes about, a sheet and a half to get all of the dough out on of the bowl. And if you have double ovens, it works great. I found out that I can sequence them so that as you're finishing up the first and rolling out the second, because this only takes about 10 minutes to make on regular baking oven, you can just be putting one cookie sheet in and getting another one out just about at the same, sequencing, halfway through, and it works out pretty well. And because this is going to be stiffer, I think I'm going to be able to get almost everything on one cookie sheet. What I didn't tell you is that not only is the flour part of the local ingredients, it was also the coffee from the Stanton Coffee company that we're using in the espresso. So I had to get that plug in too, because office was smelling great the last week when we were able to get all the coffee. One of our staff did a lot of coffee grinding for the coffee that you received in those little bags. And we hope you have had plenty for this. And I am getting to the bottom here. And for the sake of time, don't worry, I'm not going to try to scrape everything and get it all clean. And I'll only do one batch for this, since I would be just trying to fill time otherwise for this. But we're hoping that you can realize that you can take some of these ingredients and make good concoctions out of them. And one more. And typically, yes, this is the way I look after I'm doing cookies of any kind. And now that I have made a complete mess on my hands, let's see if I can get this wiped off. And I'll show you exactly how I have them placed without rolling them off into the floor, hopefully. And can you see them? I don't know. I'm not gonna tilt this up too much, but if that's good enough, that for me is always the perfect spacing for, and I pretty much all of my cookies, I get that amount on. So Jenna, come on in. Love having someone to help me. You can get over here, and I'm going to give this to Jenna French, who is our local economic developer in Shenandoah County, and she is helping me with taking this over to the oven and getting them in. I'm using a convection oven, so it's going to be 8 minutes. We did this earlier, and typically I have a convection oven, but I typically, for baking pound cakes or cookies and so forth, just to use the regular bake. Found out that 10 minutes is too long if you're, want a softer cookie. And so 8 minutes is what we're going to do. So I am going to interview our next guest, who is Kristen Wilson. And I am going over to, we're going to try this again. I'm going to go over to a different camera. Thank you. Kristen, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, Jay.
Hey, good. And I tried to dress for the occasion too.
I love it.
Got my Reese's shirt on. So Kristen, I'm just going to let you introduce yourself, and we'll get into having you tell us about what the boot camp was and how you got into it. So go ahead and introduce yourself and what you're doing at Hershey, and then I'm fascinated by what you're doing and how you got into it.
All right. Well, my name's Kristen. I've been at Hershey since June of 2018. I went through the first boot camp. And I've been on the same line since I started. I've worked on multiple lines when my line's been down, but I've been on the same line, which is the Almond Joy and Mounds mini or snack size. Currently, I run the machine that puts the chocolate on the candy bars. I got the ability to train onto that because of the boot camp. I got a lot of training early on, so I moved up pretty quick.
What was it that attracted you to go into the boot camp? What was it that made you think, this is something that I would like to do? Or did you even really know what you were getting into, I guess is even a better question.
Well, I honestly, at the point, I didn't really know what I was getting into. I had some friends that I had made down here that had worked at Hershey, and they talked about how much they liked it, and it was a good opportunity. And at the time, they were rolling out the boot camp, and it was the best way to get on. So I went for it.
Were there surprises involved in the boot camp that, you would never know that were going on in what is, people euphemistically call a cookie camp or a candy, factory or so forth?
Well, I joke that I was sad that there wasn't a chocolate water fountain like in Willy Wonka, but like I said, I run that machine, so I get to watch it every night. But no, there was a few different things when I got there. Once we made it to the factory, like she said earlier, the first week is classroom training where we learn about the factory, we learn about what to expect and all the safety, so that we were prepared when we go in. And then that second week we went to the floor, and there was a lot of machines. It's a little overwhelming at first, But being in the boot camp and getting the training, they take their time with you and they show you all the stuff that you need to see, and they go over all the safety protocols. So once you get there, you relax and you see it, and it's a really neat process.
Yeah, I was going to ask about some of the guidelines. What was like a typical day for you when you were going through the boot camp?
Well, the first week in the classroom training, we'd go in and I actually had a person teaching my class that had retired from Hershey. So he had a lot of information that was really great. He had actually started when they started running. So it was really good to get his perspective on things. It was a neat part of the program for me. And then once we got to the factory, I worked with a trainer, and the trainers are so awesome there. And she took us through and walked us down the line and showed us all the machines and really gave us a feel for what we would be interested in.
Did you know when you went in exactly what kind of job that you were going to be lined up for, or did you have choices for the different jobs? And how has that impacted, where you are now with the company?
I had no idea.
If you understand what I'm trying to ask.
Yeah, I do. No, I had no idea what I wanted to do. Once you get in there and you get comfortable, you will talk to people there and they'll tell you, like, you're either a kitchen person or a wrapping in person. On my line currently, I know both ends. I've run most of the machines, and I'm a kitchen person. I like to be on the other end where we're making it. So like I said, I run the enrober. That is where we put the chocolate on the candy itself. And I've run the machine that puts the coconut patties down. So that ends where I like to be. There are people that prefer the wrapping end, and that's where the candy goes through and just gets wrapped and packaged.
I had the fortune of seeing the line that you're talking about in the 2019 expansion, where you actually do a tour. And I know tours are pretty rare,
Right.
Because of food safety and other issues, but I was fascinated at watching. It was the Mounds and the Almond Joy line. I don't know how you separate them, but I do remember the Almond Joys there. And oh my gosh, it was a pretty amazing to see what was going on there. And in the volume, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I remember some statistics that was shared with us when we went through the plant. And isn't it something like 100 million pounds of cocoa you process on a yearly basis at this plant?
Yeah, it's something like that. It's real high numbers. And like I know for my line personally, we run about 112 rows a minute of candy. And so, I mean, we're there 24 hours a day. So you can imagine the amount of candy that's going out.
If I remember correctly, and I don't know, I'll have to do the math after this, but it seemed like it was like 10,000 a minute or so that you're producing on your line. And just numbers that are staggering. And I was like, the only thing I could think is this country loves good candy. But.
Well, the Stewart's Draft plant is the only Almond Joy and Mounds factory. If you're eating an Almond Joy or Mounds, even all the way in Japan, it came from Stewart's Draft.
Thank you for sharing that. I did not know that. That is a great a tidbit. One of the last things I want to ask you, well, I've got two more questions for you. And one of them is, during the boot camp process, I know this always resonates with both our site location decision makers, and then, when they're talking about the workforce. Did this separate some people out who realized early on that this was not the career that they wanted?
Because that is the good thing about the boot camp itself, is it does give you the opportunity to see if this is the path you want to take. And we had people in my first class as well that decided early on that just wasn't for them. And a lot of people that I've went through with, or that I've seen and talked to about the boot camp, I mean, they've really come to like their job.
That's great. All right, the last question is, what's it like working, living, and playing in the Shenandoah Valley?
Oh, well, it's gorgeous. I love it here. So being from Ohio, we had like rolling flatlands and farmland, which is real pretty. But once you visit and see the mountains, like I came down to visit friends that moved down here, and I fell in love instantly. I love the mountain scenes, and being at Hershey, you get some of the best views when you leave in the morning when the sun's coming up. I work third shift, so I get the pleasure of seeing the sun come up in the morning, and it's absolutely beautiful in the mountains.
Thank you, Kristen. Well, really appreciate what you're doing. Thank you for joining us and sharing about sort of the insider portion of the Hershey Boot Camp. And your timing is perfect because the cookies just came out of the oven. So now I'm going to run over and we're going to put the mini Hershey cups right into the cookies. So I'm going to pivot back. Cookies are done. I had a good question that came in while we're doing this. While they're still hot, this is the time to put these in here. I typically put one Hershey mini, cup in each one of them. If you're making bigger cookies, you can easily put two, but you want to do this as quickly as possible. The question arose is, how has COVID impacted the food and beverage, is that right, Carrie, or the industry in the Valley? I will tell you that we have all talked amongst all of our local economic development community and sort of the state at large. We couldn't have scripted our past year. I anticipated, like everyone else, that there was going to be a major shutdown and we would be focusing primarily on helping our existing businesses, try to work with displaced workers, that we would be, handling a lot of helping with the programs for grants provision, helping with actually, the food supplies and so forth. And it certainly, our localities did an excellent job of working with the CARES Act money and providing grants to small businesses. But in several cases, our localities were almost having to ask the companies, please take some of the money. Am I right, Jenna? I mean, that was Jenna French actually had money and was trying to give it away, and companies were like, no, somebody else is more deserving. So that's a nice story to say. We actually bounced back extraordinarily quickly in the Shenandoah Valley. The hospitality side of our economy is still hurting, like it is everywhere. Several of our localities that are heavily based with tourism suffered and are continuing to suffer. The Homestead Resort is based in one of our localities and it essentially shut down. That is the mainstay of their economy in that locality. But our manufacturing has simply just, it never even paused. We probably, the top 5 companies that come to mind right away, we have probably 500 to 700 job openings of those manufacturers. The Hershey Boot Camp is still continuing. We have other companies that are looking to hire. Our unemployment has now dropped down below 4.5%. This was October's numbers. So we are actually, and I think we can thank part of this due to the food and beverage industry itself. But it's not just food and beverage. We have pharmaceutical. We have heavier fabrication, like Daikin Applied, which is a Japanese-owned company where they make industrial chillers. All of these companies are going 100% for us. So we feel very blessed. The breadth of the manufacturing sector, which is our largest private sector employment base in the Valley, which makes us a little rare as well, is very strong. And so Merck's expansion is continuing, which was announced in 2019, $1 billion. There we have, Jenna just had a recent announcement, IEC, a European-based automotive company that announced. It was a project she had been working on for quite a while. So a lot of expansions, but it's not just been expansions. We have, I think it's 2 companies with tentative plans. We're waiting on the announcement right now. One of them is a European company that is major expansion and their first foray into the U.S. for the manufacturing. So we're very excited. That one is also in the food and beverage sector, so we're happy about that. So I hope that I answered the question there. In the meantime, while I finally was able to both talk and put the Reese's in at the same time, you can see that now the Reese's peanut butter cups are melting. I like removing the cookies from the cookie sheet, putting them on cooling racks, and you can do that. Or you can just leave them on the cookie sheet. The insulated cookie sheet doesn't, you know, make them harder on the bottom. That's what I love about this. But these, at this point, because this is a short bed type recipe, you can typically just about pick them up by hand. And when I'm at home, I have, I don't even know what it's called, but I have one of those blades and you can just scoop them up, and I love using that. So that's how, and I let them sit here a couple of minutes, maybe 3, probably took longer than I should have when I was talking with you. Let them get good and firm, and then I convert everything over to the cooling rack and I let them cool 10, 15 minutes. I like mine, I mean, these are pretty good warm, but I like mine after they have set up some, and they will look like this. Once they're done. And you can see these cook just a little bit longer than I would. I like a soft cookie. I don't like, you know, the crisp cookie. If you like, you know, a firmer, you know, drier cookie, you know, the 10 minutes, you know, will make this in conventional baking. It does this on convection baking, and we are in good shape. Oh, and while we're thinking about it, while these cookies are warm, thank you, Carrie. It's great that I have people helping me out because I can't remember everything I'm supposed to do. The warm cookies are great with Mount Crawford Creamery milk. This is a local dairy that is expanding their ice cream line, believe it or not. They use their fresh, non-homogenized cream that goes into this ice cream. I know people are wild about Italian gelato and different ice creams. I'm not an ice cream snob, but I have never had any better ice cream than what Smiley's is doing. $1.5 million expansion. We're excited. And so this is the local product that I'm going to be enjoying with some of the cookies here shortly. And that's really it from the cooking standpoint. I hope that you enjoyed following along with what we're doing. Hopefully I was somewhat linear in my process. Sorry about forgetting the mini chocolate chips, but thankfully I have people that can help me out and remind me of what I'm supposed to be doing. I really like the way that these turned out. I think they're good. I think people enjoy them. I had somewhat of a smaller audience with 2 sons, 26 and 20. I don't know if that really qualifies as a really, you know, picky audience, but they were eating these about as quick as I could make them when I made these. And everybody else that tried them really liked them. And if you want to adjust the recipe, feel free to have at it. I hope that when the Hershey folks see what I've done, that the food scientists are not appalled by how I mixed all of this together. But I think they turn out great. You can see how simple they are, particularly if you remember all the results. And let me wrap things up here. And I have no idea of where I left my cue card, so it doesn't matter at this point. So what? Oh, under here. I think, yes. So I'm having a little more trouble with this particular program than I normally do with my webinars. what I wanted you to know is that this is the kind of products that we produce. I hope you had fun following along. Hopefully you were able to follow along. If you wanted to learn more about the Valley and what we have going on, our website is theshenandoahvalley.com. Our quality of life website, which is a new website for us because we are really focusing on sort of the Christians in our world to talk about the talent retention and attraction here because of the opportunities that are available. That new website is ShenandoahValleyLiving.com. So again, our companion website for our quality of life is ShenandoahValleyLiving.com. We also have a new podcast that is launching soon. We've recorded one. We'll be doing another here very shortly. And so if you're interested in that, just stay tuned for that. We'd like to thank our host again, the Yellow Barn, the Shenandoah Valley Caverns complex here. They have the original homestead house that is a bed and breakfast that is available. It's right off the interstate, easy to get to, wonderful amenities. And so please feel free if you're just driving through the valley to stop by there. And we look forward to doing another one of these, and I'll try to get this polished as much as I can between now and then. But thank you to our guest, to Sharon Johnson and Kristen Wilson. Thanks again to the Shenandoah Valley Caverns for hosting us here at their wonderful. Thank you to our guests. We are thrilled that a number of you reached out and wanted to participate in this. And I hope that this was fun and it's something that we're going to try again. And let us know what you think. I'd love to have your feedback in that regard. And with that, I hope everyone has a great afternoon and we will see you later.